My name is David Thomas Smith. I retired out as a Navy career counselor, Master Chief, submarine qualified. And I really had no idea what the Navy was truly about. All I know is that one of my relatives came home, just came back off what we call a Westpac, had 6 months pay in his pocket, big wad of money, wearing his whites, looked good. All the girls in town wanted to get with him. And, you know, he was just telling me about it. And then he says, and yeah, if you do 20 years, you'll get 50% of your pay for the rest of your life. Well, I was only about 17 at that time. And I was always good with math. So I said, I could retire at 38, draw a pension for the rest of my life, and still have a second career. And that's basically what I did, you know. Well, that was my first cousin. His name was Carl Thomas. And what was interesting is Carl had been in 4 years, and he got out as an E3. He lacked motivation. And that's the easiest way to describe him. He lacked motivation. He was one of those people that as long as he had some money in his pocket, he saw no reason really to bust his tail to do any better. He's making it. So that was kind of like how it was. And he only did one tour, and he got out. But because of him, I went in and I did a career. But then I must admit the reason I did a career really, I found out I was accepted to a couple of colleges, but I had already joined the Navy and had a commitment with them. So instead of going to college, I went to the Navy, and that was how I got into the Navy. A lot of folks were upset because they had arranged for scholarships and so forth for me, but I didn't know. They were going to spring it on me the day of graduation, you know, as part of the award ceremony. They were going to give me my scholarship, but I had already enlisted. So I guess when I went in to enlist, I was probably my Navy recruiter's easiest contract, because he says, how long you want to enlist for? I says, well, I'm going to do 20, so let's do it for 20. He says, no, you can't do it for 20. At that time, he said 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 year enlistment. So I said, let's do 6. That we only have to do it 3.5 times. And so that was how I enlisted in the Navy. And then, of course, I went to boot camp in San Diego. I was from Chicago. Actually, I was from Selma, Alabama. That's where I was born. And then I went to Chicago, and in Chicago I enlisted. And from there, instead of sending me to Great Lakes, because that was during the time of '62 and they had a big fire up there, that they asked me to go to San Diego. So I went to San Diego. And I went to boot San Diego. Well, the first thing you found out was that they tend to take away your identity. And they did that with the shaved heads, took everybody's hair off, gave you clothes that didn't necessarily fit. They were not tailor-made. They had you get up some ridiculous hours. It's like you were just at their beckoning whim. But at the same time, as I progressed, I started to understand why it was done the way it was. Because you wanted a unit to operate, not individuals. And so once I kind of figured that out, that helped. But at the same time, I always felt like I was getting the short end of the stick. And they were intentionally sometimes trying to give me tasks that were designed to wash me out, because I didn't belong there. They didn't want me there, but I persevered anyway, in spite of, you know. But yeah, boot camp was a shock. I was in San Diego, so it wasn't too bad. San Diego at that time treated pretty much all military personnel the same, and the bulk of us were boot camps, you know, they're in boot camp, and they all knew it. They looked at your haircut, the clothes you were wearing, you know, brand new and all that, so nobody was fooling anybody. But overall, boot camp, I could say, was a pretty fair deal. I mean, I didn't have any real misgivings about boot camp. It was a shock. I had to learn how to do it the military way, but other than that, military was okay, boot camp was okay. For me, that was it was culture shock, to say the least. Here I was, a farm kid. Well, actually, I'd lived between Selma, Alabama and Chicago. I traveled back and forth. And I spent a lot of time on the farm. And when I went into the Navy, that was my first experience for me personally, being around military folks per se. And the main reason I joined the military was because it was a way out. At that point in time, that was where the jobs were. And I needed something that was going to give me some kind of foundation that I would be able to use and build upon when I got out. So, excuse me, so the Navy looked like the best opportunity. So that's how I really got into the Navy. Other than that, I mean, my cousin never really sat me down and told me about the ins and outs of the Navy or anything. That never happened. So when I went into the Navy, I was like a deer caught in the headlights. All of it was brand new for me. I had to learn everything. And again, since, like I said, racism and prejudice was alive and well, there were not very many whites that were willing to work with me, to help me. So everything I did, I had to get mostly by being able to study the books. That's how I got most of my promotions. And that's why I liked the Navy better at that time, their promotion system, because the promotion system was set up in such a way that was designed for 50-50. 50% came off of your academic testing in your job field, and then the other 50% came off of your job evaluation performance by your command. So command could not like you, give you low evals, but if you aced the exam, because they averaged the 2, you still stood a good chance of getting promoted. So that was one of the things that I enjoyed about the Navy, and that always worked in my favor, because for years my performance marks were below what I was, how I was performing. I didn't know it. It was only one day a senior yeoman just pulled me aside and said, "Smith, let me point out to you that you're getting shortchanged on your evaluations. Your group is getting marked 3.2, 3.4. You're getting marked 2.7, 2.8, which said does its job." That's the way it was. I didn't know that in submarine force, that's the way they skewed evaluations. And then once I found out and I confronted my superiors, then they corrected it, and I started getting evals that were indicative of my true talent within the community, submarine community, as compared to my contemporaries. But for the longest time, as we used to say, they were pencil whipping me. I didn't know it. I didn't know it because I wasn't privileged to admin, and they never showed you where you stood in your group, in your group performance. They always gave you your evals individually. Now that has changed since then, but that's the way it was back then.